So let us begin. Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Okay, so we are, let us begin with the Gemara. We're in Daf Chav Gimel. And we're up to Chav Gimel. And we'll start from Chav Beis, Amid Beis, about 5 lines from the bottom. Okay, here we are in the Gemara. We just learned yesterday that they lit up at night to get the message out to the diaspora, of that they were Makadesh the Kodesh, right? So they lit torches on one mountain, and the next mountain, when he saw one mountain light a torch, he would light a torch as well. And in that way, in the third mountain would light another torch. And that way they got the message all the way north towards Bavel. So the Mishnah uses the odd expression, Masi and Masuas. They would light torches. What is it? My mashma, how do you see in Tanakh that Masian, the word Masian means Lishna Dikaidhu, means a language of lighting up, of a flame. So the Gemara says, Diksiv, I have a pasuk that says, V'yiso'eim David va'anashem. Yiso'eim David va'anashem. It's talking about David taking revenge from enemies, and he lit up and fired up and burned their avodah zarah. Umetargaminam, and the translation of the word Vayiso'eim, Vaikdinin David, and David made a fire and burned them. So the reason the Mishnah uses that expression is because it could tell you light a fire, but you would think it's like a campfire. What it wants you to do with cedar wood is to take a fire very high up.
Down to nothing.
Right. Hold on.
If your nail was normal, your nail would be out here.
If they want to make a fire, they want to make a fire that you can see far away. So therefore, that's why it uses the language by masian. You could like a flame that's straight up. Tanurabanan. So when did they light this flame? Okay. So as I explained to you in the Mishnah, they lit the flame the day after Rosh Chodesh, if it was a chaser. In other words, if the month was 29 days, the 30th day became Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the next month. That night, they lit the fire to tell everybody that the day before was Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara says like this, turn on the Brisa taught, we cannot light torches only on the month that the moon was seen on the 29th day, 29 and a half day, and we made the 30th day a holy day. When did they light the torches? The night after, the night of the 31st. In other words, the night after the 30th day, that night told everybody, hey, the day before was Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara says, Lemembra, do you want to say that you're implying the Achoseh Avdinim, they only lit torches on months that were on if the Rosh Chodesh, the previous month was 29 days. Amole lo yavdinan. But if the previous month was 30 days, and in other words, the 31st day is Rosh Chodesh, and the 31st at night, let's say the night of the 32nd day, you don't light torch. So you only do it if the previous month was a shorter month, like a 29-day month, not if it was a 30-day month. My Tama, what's the reason? We should light torches every time there's Rosh Chodesh, whether it's a 29-day month or whether there's a 30-day month. So maybe you figured out the answer. It's a very simple answer. Amar Abzera, Gzer Mishum Rosh Chodesh Cholias Ber Shabbos. Let's say the 30th day fell out on Friday. So technically, they were supposed to light the torches on Friday night to tell you that Friday was Rosh Chodesh. But since you can't light a torch on Friday night, so they're going to do it Motzei Shabbos. But if you also did it on 30-day months, so then when you light the torch on Motzei Shabbos, they're not going to know was the Rosh Chodesh on Friday. And the reason why you didn't lighting it Motzei Shabbos is because you couldn't do it Friday night, or was the previous month a 30-day month, and therefore Motzei Shabbos is telling you that Shabbos was Rosh Chodesh. And therefore, it leads to confusion. That's why you have to pick one or the other. And they picked that you should do it, light the torches, only if it's a 29-day month prior. And Amos Avdei. So the Gemara says like this, Rosh Chodesh that fell out on Friday. Amos Avdei, when could they really light the torch? On Motzei Shabbos, because you can't light the torch on Friday night. Now you can see the problem. The Amid Naviname Amole. If you tell me that you should do it on both, whether you have a Rosh Chodesh that's 30 days or a Rosh Chodesh that's a Chodesh that's 29 days, Asi, we go to the top of Chaf Gimel, Asa Limite Amre, they're going to say, you don't know what to make of it if you lit at Matzah Shabbos. Hi Chaserhu. Either the 29th day either Rosh Chodesh was on Friday and it was a short month. But hi delay Ovid Me'asmal, and the reason why they didn't light the torch on Friday night, where they should have, that's not possible. That's Chilul Shabbos. Or maybe Malehu, maybe it's a 30-day month. And therefore, Uvizmani Avidin, by lighting it at Matzah Shabbos, told you that Shabbos was Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, you're left with no choice, just to have one sign. The only time you're going to light a torch is on a 29-day month. So therefore, when Friday was Rosh Chodesh, they would actually light it Matzah Shabbos, but everybody knew that it's not Shabbos was Rosh Chodesh. Everybody knew if you're lighting it, it must be that Friday was Rosh Chodesh, because if it was Shabbos, you wouldn't light at all, because full months you don't light. Only if it's 29-day months, then you light. So you're lighting it.
Why couldn't they light it Sunday night for Shabbos Rosh Chodesh?
For Sunday night, that's like for Shabbos.
If Shabbos is the 31st and it was a Mole and it was Shabbos, you would light it the next night, Sunday night.
You would light it on Motzei Shabbos. The question,
Shabbos.
Motzei Shabbos. It's always the night telling you that the day.
Oh, it's
passed.
the night. So if it's a chaser, you would light it the 30th at night.
Right.
That's right.
That's
okay,
right.
I understand now. Sorry, I misunderstood. Okay.
Yes. So now the question of the Gemara is, the scenario that we're dealing with is that if Friday was the 30th day and it was Rosh Chodesh, so the question was, you're going to light Matzah Shabbos, but if you normally light on a month that had 30 days, then people will see you lighting Matzah Shabbos. They're not going to know what you mean. Did you mean that Rosh Chodesh was on a Friday, or was the Rosh Chodesh on Shabbos? That's what the Gemara says. That's why we don't do it for both. So the Gemara says no. Let's light the torches whether it's a full month or whether it's not a month. And it's not a full month. If Rosh Chodesh fell out on Friday, then you don't do it at all. So people will know that Friday was, you don't light torches at all. So people will know that Friday was the Rosh Chodesh. Because if you do it on a Malay month, then Shabbos, if Shabbos was Rosh Chodesh, you would have lit Matzah Shabbos, because according to the way the Gemara supposes that, why don't you do it also, even if it's a full month? And so if you would light at Matzah Shabbos, they'll know the sign is that Shabbos was Rosh Chodesh. And if you don't light at all, they will know that Friday was Rosh Chodesh. So the Gemara is saying, the Gemara's question is, why still can't you make the rule that no matter every month, no matter what happens that month, if it's a full month or not a full month, you should always light torches? So the Gemara answers, the Gemara finishes the question. Since you didn't do it on Matzah Shabbos, and normally you do it on a full month, everybody knows it's a month that's missing things. It's a smaller month, and that really Rosh Chodesh was on a Friday. So the Gemara says, even so, they could still make a mistake. People will say, hi Malehu. Really, if you don't like Matzah Shabbos, I will assume that Shabbos was Rosh Chodesh. It was a full month. Why didn't they light on Matzah Shabbos? Which means that the people who are in charge of lighting it, got a little drunk on Shabbos. Rashi says, Shabbos. You're supposed to have a nice time on Shabbos and get a little tipsy, and they were not sober enough on Matzah Shabbos to light the fire. Therefore, what the Gemara says, the best solution to this mathematical logical problem is to only light the night after a chodesh that was chaser. So on the 30th day, which you made the first day of the next month, in other words, the previous month was 29 days, the 30th day is the next month, the first is Rosh Chodesh, that night notifies the people that it was Rosh Chodesh the day before. So the Gemara asks one final kasha. I understand why you either light the torches on a chaser month or a mole month. But the question is, pick mole and don't pick chaser. Let's just light the fire only if it's a mole month and not on a chaser month. Why do chaser and not mole? So the Gemara says, Amar Abaya, Mishum Bitul Malacha La'am Shnei Yamim. The answer is like this. If you want to do it that way, so then automatically people are going to have to keep 2 days Rosh Hashanah and they're not going to work for 2 days. In the ancient times, the idea was that Rosh Hashanah is a one-day holiday, and we don't want people to unfortunately lose wages because they can't work for 2 days because they don't know when Rosh Hashanah is. Now, if you're always notifying people that when it's a full month, when it's a mole month, so come the 30th day of El, people are going to keep Rosh Hashanah. The 31st day of El, people are going to keep Rosh Hashanah. And if they only find out that the 31st day was the Rosh Chodesh, right? Then they actually kept the 30th day as Rosh Hashanah for no reason. And therefore, it's a waste. But if you could notify them that after the 30th day, right, you tell them right then and there, it was Rosh Chodesh, so that by the 31st day, they'll go to work. So it's better off to tell people sooner than later. And that's why they made it that they only notified you on a chaser month. And this signal was that if they didn't notify you, you knew it was a mole month.
But we still do it for Rosh Chodesh, though.
You do it Rosh Chodesh, but the day after Rosh Chodesh on a chaser month. The day after
Right.
Rosh
Yeah,
Chodesh.
right. But, right. In other words, they used to, if it was a mole month, they obviously counted the days after the last torch or the last month,
right?
And they said, okay, we're assuming it's a chaser month, but no, it's a mole month, so they did 2 days of Rosh Chodesh.
Well, the Rosh Chodesh they can do 2 days, but
right,
there's no problem.
Right.
You could work on Rosh Chodesh. You could work on Rosh Chodesh.
I'm talking about that's why we do it. That's why they did it that way, because if they're assuming that it was a chaser month more than a mole month, but if it was a mole, they just celebrated Rosh Chodesh 2 days. That's
right.
What they did.
That's the worst that could happen.
The worst that could happen.
But on a Rosh Hashanah, if the only time
Rosh Hashanah is a different story. It's a yontif, right?
Right. Then they actually had to stop working for 2 days. But if they knew that the first day of Rosh Hashanah was the real Rosh Hashanah, then the next day, so you want to notify them as on a chaser
as soon as possible.
Soon as possible. Now we go off into a nice, beautiful Gemara that's very worthwhile to remember. We learned in our Mishnah that the material that they had for using the torches, the pole was made out of cedar wood. So the Gemara said, Amma Rav Yehuda made a comment. Dalid mine arozenheim. There are 4 types of cedar wood. And in fact, I did this to Google, you can actually ask the question, how many species of cedar are there? And it answers you 4. So that our science agrees with that, but we'll see that there's another opinion here. But anyway, there are 4 types of cedar. Now, why is it important to know how many species of cedar are? And the answer probably is because it's relevant to halacha, because there's a halacha when you sprinkle the paraduma waters, you have to stick it in with a cedar wood and a hyssop. So you have to know what constitutes a cedar wood. So there are 4 types. Erez, cedar, what we know as cedar. Katram, I don't know what katram, the Gemara is going to describe. Eight shemen, which is pine wood. Baraish, and cypress. Okay, Baraish is cypress. Now, kartam, the Gemara describes as kartam. You said katram. What is katram? Amarav Adra, the Adra tree. It was well known in Chazal what these trees are. The Bei Shila Amri, Mavliga. Kartam is the Mavliga tree. But Amrillah, another says Gulmish. It's the Gulmish tree. So even the kartam, you have a couple of different opinions what kartam is, but the main point is that there are 4 types of cedar wood. And this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Or Pligi the Rabba Bar Avhuna. Rabba Bar Avhuna disagreed with it. The Amar Rabba Bar Avhuna, Amar Bei Rav, he said in the name of Rav, from the yeshiva of Rav, Asara Mina Arazimhem. There are 10 types of cedar wood. How do you know? Shenema, because I have a pasuk in Yeshaya. Now, this pasuk in Yeshaya says that God is going to, in the times of Mashiach, he's going to plant all sorts of fine wood in Israel to make up for the destruction that all the all the nations of the world that pillaged the Eretz Yisrael, Hashem's going to replant the best of the best trees and take it from their land and bring it to our lands. Shenema, etem b'midbar eretz shita b'adas eretz shema osem b'araba b'roish titov v'sa'asha yachtav. This pasuk mentions 7 types of wood. Eretz is arza, is cedar wood. Shita is tunisa wood, which is acacia. Hadas, we know, is the myrtle. Asa, there's myrtle trees. Shemen is pine trees. B'roish, we says brasa is cypress. Tidhar is shaga. So shaga is the maple tree, and ta'asher is the sharvina tree, rivna tree, which is the box tree. So we see in the pasuk that we're going to get in Israel, you'll have a growth of 7 different types of cedar trees. So the question is, you, Rav, told us that there are 10 types of cedar trees, and this pasuk only mentions Shiva. Hani Shiva have it. There's only 7. You told me there's 10. So Ki Asar Avdimi Amar, he said, Haisifa Aleim, they're going to they added to this pasuk, Almonim, Almonim, Almogim, terebinth, oak, and coral. Now, this coral tree, this is a very important word we're going to learn over here. We'll get back to that in a second. Aloimin is butmi, almonim is baluti, almogin is kasisa. Kasisa is the coral tree. The coral tree we're going to learn right now is a tree that's underneath the ocean, and that tree will be growing in Israel, and we'll see what that means. Ike de Amri, basically aroinim, armoinim, almogim. These are different type, bay, plain, and again, Almogin is the coral tree. Arainim is Ore, is the bay tree. Armanin is Dulve, the plain tree. Almogin is Kasisa, the coral tree. And we're going to discuss this coral tree. Imagine you go under the ocean and you see a tree of coral. Now, it seems to me, I'm not sure, but it seems to me that the Gemara is going to discuss right now, how do they mine for this tree? And it's very, very, very valuable. It had medicinal properties to it. So listen to this Gemara. The Gemara says, "Vitzi adir lo yavirenu." Great ships will not be able to pass. Remember, we learned I think in Yuma about the 3rd Beis Hamikdash, which is depicted in Yechaskel. It's going to have a water source coming from the base Kache Kachim, and then it starts off as a trickle, and then it becomes this massive flowing river. So strong will be the current that great ships will not be able to pass through this river. Amarav zu burni gedola. It's a great ship. Now the Gemara says, "What heicha avdi? Why do people make big, heavy ships?" So maisi, because they take this heavy ship. Now listen to this. Take a heavy ship. Umaisi shish alfi gabri. You take 6,000 people to work betresa yarchishata, 12 months a year. Imagine having 6,000 people working 12 months a year. They're on one project. The army law, you hire Teresa Alpha Gabri, 12,000 people, Beshita Yarchishata, on 6 months a year. So you're hiring all these people to do one thing. What do they do with the ship? They fill up the ship with sandbags until the ship sinks. In other words, the ship is anchored off in the ocean, and they have to bring sandbags to the ship. V'noches, until it sinks a little bit. V'noches bar amaroi, and then divers, once the ship sinks because of the weight of the sand on the ship, then v'noches bar amaroi, these divers go down deep into the water. V'koter atine dichitana, they tie with flax reeds, b'chasisin, the coral tree that's under the ocean. V'koter lubesavisa, in the other end of the rope, they tie to the ship. Now they're connected. Then they take off the sandbags, v'shadi lebroi, and they send it outside. They throw it away. And then the kama de midlia, as the ship, comes back to the surface, it raises up. Okra, it uproots this tree, umaisif, and it can bring it up from the ground. So if you want to see a picture of how it is, this is the picture. You see on my screen here. So you see how they weight it down. They tie something from the tree to the here, and as they take off the sandbags, the boat floats back up to the top. Now, it was worth it to do all this, hire 12,000 people, because the value of that tree, one piece of wood from that tree is worth 2 times in silver. Silver was valuable. So 2 times, let's say you have an ounce of this tree is worth what you pay for 2 ounces of silver. So it's a very valuable. I think there's medicinal property. It doesn't say why they did it and why this is brought in the Gemara. But I think why the Gemara talks to you about it is because people did not, if it's brought in the Gemara, maybe the Gemara is trying to tell you it's valuable, you should buy it because it's real.
Excuse me, Baruch, when you say the ocean, to me that sounds very deep. How divers can get that deep way back when? It couldn't have been
Right. So it's probably, these are specialized people that probably could be down there for 2-3 minutes at a time. I don't know.
They couldn't be deep, even so. I mean,
listen, the record of person underwater is about like 16 minutes or something like that. Underwater. I don't know. Maybe these people had large lungs.
maybe it wasn't too far offshore because Coral Island. All right.
Right.
All right.
The fact is that it was worth hiring 12,000 people to make this kind of a profit.
My understanding is I did the the pre-DAF today is that it wasn't very shallow. The water was very shallow. So basically the ship would be the bottom and still the water would not be above the ship. So it wasn't very deep at all. They were able to get down there because they didn't have any oxygen tanks or anything.
Remember, but the Gemara describes this process with 12,000 people. So it's
how many years ago was this? When was this Gemara?
This Gemara is written in the I guess in 2,000 years ago, right? So this is what it was done. The Gemara is going to say right now, there are 3 ports that did this kind of work. Tarte Bei Ramoy, 2 ports were Roman ports. Bechada Bei Parsoi, and one was a Persian port. The Bei Ramoy in the Roman ports, Maskin Kasisa, they mined this coral wood. The Bei Parsoi in the Persian one, Maskin Marganisa, they mine pearls like the oysters, like they have in Japan. Umakarne Parvasa de Mashmig, and everybody knew this is the royal ports because I guess these probably were off limits to private enterprise. It would belong to the kingdom, and therefore, so this is all brought into the Gemara that eventually all these coral trees are going to be replanted in Israel. Amar, that's what the point is. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Shita v'Shita Shnot L'Goyim Yerushalayim, any line or tree that the Goyim took from Jerusalem, Asura Kadosh Baruch Hu l'hachzira law. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to return it because Nema etem b'midbar, I'm going to re-give to the desert Eretz Shita all these trees, and Midbar, the desert, Vein Midbar Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is called a Midbar because after the destruction of the temple, it was like a wasteland. Shenema Tzia Midbar Hayasa. As we're seeing today, Jerusalem is coming alive. We Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan taught another statement. Kol haloymid Torah. If you learn Torah, ve'eino malamda, you don't make time to teach somebody else. So that's one of the cardinals of learning and absorbing your learning is not just to learn, but just find somebody to teach. Vishinantam, it's in the Krishma. So daimel hadas b'midbar. If you're just learning and absorbing and you're not teaching, you're like a myrtle in the desert where nobody can benefit from. It's a nice fragrant smell, but no one benefits from it. But Ikadi others say this is like the Lubavitch. You go to a place and teach Torah in a place that there is no Talmid Chacham, nobody is learning there, and you come there and you can teach other people. You're also similar to a myrtle in the desert, the chaviv that's beloved. It's so precious because you're the only one that's teaching Torah in this remote place. So but the idea is that a person should make at least certain times that they're teaching somebody Torah. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, and here's the final statement. And this was a debate. He said, listen to what he says. Whatever the Goyim did to us, there's no way to make reparations because you can pay back the wealth that they stole. and you could pay it back with interest and lost interest. So like Shnema, Tachas and Achoishes Avi Zahav. Instead of them taking copper, they're going to bring to us gold. Instead of the metal they took from us, Avi Kesef, they'll bring silver. Instead of the wood, Nechoishes, we're going to get copper. Instead of stones, Barzel, we're going to get iron. Okay, you could pay back the wealth that they took from us and they pillaged from us, but the people that they killed, how could they replace that? Tachas Rabbi Akiva v'chaverim, people like Rabbi Akiva who gave, and his friends and people like him who gave up their life in a sacrifice. How could you replace that? This the pasuk says, "V'nikesi." God says I can forgive, but I can wipe away, but damam lo nikesi, I can never forgive and cleanse you from the blood that you took away from the Jewish people. Which brought up the debate when the Germans wanted to give reparations to Israel after the war, Gutsgeld, I don't know what they called it. There was major debate, should you accept or should you not accept? And the idea of not accepting is because they're not replaceable. And just accepting money that will give them the message that, okay, you paid, we got paid for it, and let's move on.
Well, never mind. Go ahead. No, I'll ask the question.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just finish the daf. Ma'ayin hoy masim asuris, Beis Bilton. One of the mountains was called Beis Bilton. Mine Beis Bilton. Where is the mountain of Beis Bilton? Because the Gemara knew from the Mishnah all the other places, but this Beis Bilton, they didn't know. Amarav, we go to Amad Sheni. Zu, this was Biram. This is called the place Biram. My Goyla, what is the diaspora? Amarav Yosef Zu Pumpadisa. That is the Pumpadisa, which was the city at the border of Israel. And once you the mountain of Israel notified that border city Pumpadisa when the Rosh Chodesh was, and then everybody and the whole place got lit up. My Kimduras Aish. What do you mean that everybody was lit up with fire? Everybody who lived in Pumpadisa wanted to give the message to Israel that we received the information when Rosh Chodesh was. So everybody went on top of their roof with a torch in their hand, and they waved to the guy on the mountain that was in Israel that, hey, that we got the message and we're going to pass it on to the rest of Bavel. So the whole city looked like one bonfire. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Elazar said, Av Chorim v'Kayar v'Geder v'Charaseh. There were other mountains not mentioned in the Mishnah. Chorim, Kayar, Geder, and other mountains. So where were these mountains? Others say that they were in between the 5 mountains mentioned in the Mishnah. These mountains were in between. They weren't mentioned in the Mishnah, but you should know there were other mountains. Others says no. It was actually another direction towards Bavel. In other words, Bavel was northeast from Jerusalem. So one group of mountains went to the north. One meant bended towards north, but a little more to the east. And that's how those were those mountains not mentioned in the Mishnah. Our Mishnah was going in one direction towards Bavel, and the Brisa that says other mountains, Reb Shimon Elazar, was going in another direction towards Bavel. Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, "Bein kol achas v'achas shmoyne parsois." Between each mountain was 8 parsos, which is about 25 miles. Kama havalahu. How many do you have miles in total from Har Zaysim to the end of Israel? Tlosim v'tarta. You have 32, which is about 100 miles. So the Gemara said to the last mountain, it was about 100 miles. So the Gemara says, if I took a car, I see it's more than that. So how could Rabbi Yochanan say it takes you 100 miles? It takes me longer to get there. The answer is, Amar Abaye, istamune istatum luhu darche. The roads go in crooked because there's no straight road in Israel. That's what it is. Why? The ksiv, because until the Mashiach comes, there's no straight road in Israel. The ksiv, the hinene soch is darkech basim. God says, I'm going to hedge your way, your roads with thorns. In other words, you're going to always have to go in a crooked way. And there have not it says in Eicha Nesivaisai, my paths Eva are bent, are crooked. So the point is that although if you took a measuring rod from Har Mishcha, from Har Zaysim till that last mountain base built them, you probably would get 32 parsois, so about 100 miles plus or whatever. But the fact that it takes you longer to get there, it's just because the roads are crooked. The Mishnah continues. There was a big courtyard in Jerusalem, and that was called Beis Yazek. And anybody who had to be Mechal Shabbos would come there and spend the Shabbos there. Now, if you Mechal Shabbos and go out of your Tchum to another city, you have a knas. You're not allowed to walk Dalar Amos. You have to stay in one spot and not move. If it was by accident or you did it for a mitzvah, then if you're in an enclosed area, you can walk around that enclosed area, but you can't leave the city because you came out from outside the Tchum. What we'll see in our Mishnah, in order to make it easier for the Eidim that they should want to come and they shouldn't feel so restricted, they made a rule that if they came from outside the Tchum and they came into this closed area, not only can they walk around the enclosed area, but they can also walk around the city and beyond the city 2,000 amos. They're not restricted at all. That's what it says. There was a fenced-in courtyard in Jerusalem. It was called Beis Yazek. Ulasham, there, Kol Ha'edim Wisconsin. You saw the new moon. And remember, you saw the new moon usually at sunset. I want to make that clear. You saw the new moon just after sunset, you can see the new moon. And all the Eidim that saw the new moon would gather there. And then the court would go there and check the Eidim out on Shabbos. This is referring to Shabbos. The court would go there and ask the questions to get the right Eidim witnesses for Kiddush HaChodesh. And they made big parties over there, food. You had food there, so they should be accustomed to come. You come Shabbos and you don't have food, you never want to do this again. So they made big parties over there. And this is a remez that today we make, some people make parties on Rosh Chodesh to remember that party that they made for the Eidim. In the very beginning, they had to stay there a whole day. His skin, Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken, he said that you have a din that the people could be like inhabitants of the city. They could leave not only that courtyard, that fenced-in courtyard, but they could walk around the whole city, and they could even leave the city 2,000 amos in each direction. Not only these people that were Mechal Shabbos to come to Jerusalem and say testimony, anybody, a midwife that helps somebody give birth, or a fireman that's trying to save somebody from a fire and have to go outside the Tchum, or a police officer that's helping control the violence in a city that's beyond this Tchum. Again, if these guys get to the new city and the danger is over, they're not restricted in where they could walk around. They could walk around the whole city, and they could even leave the city a little bit. If you're trying to save somebody from a flood, or from a building collapse, if you're not sure there's somebody who's there, if all the people came there to try to save somebody from a building collapse, and they came there on Shabbos, they can walk around the whole city. They're just like a regular dweller of that city. They can leave 2,000 amos in each direction from that city. They don't have to be restricted to stay in that city. The Gemara asks a question: Beis Yazek Tanan or Beis Yazek Tanan? Was it called Beis Yazek or Beis Yazek? What does that mean? Did they call the courtyard by a name that reflects an uplifting name or a derogatory name? What does it mean? Beis Yazek Tanan Lishna Ma'alihu. Is the word Beis Yazek means an uplifting name? Diksiv vayazkeu vaysalkeu. That means that he fenced them in and then removed all the stones. He protected them. So the word Yazek in Tanakh has a nice meaning to it. Dilma, sometimes Beis Yazek, without the ayin, it has a derogatory meaning. Lishna detzarahu, it means somebody who's in pain, or confined. The word zikim means if you're tied in chains. So why did they call this Beis Yazek? Is it like a negative name? And they said, oh, whoever gets into that is restricted? Or did they call it yazek with an ayin? It means that you're protected and you're uplifted. These are the people that came to this courtyard, did something great. Amar Abaye Tashma. Let's come in here. They made big parties over there so that the people should come. So it seems to be that they tried to, they wanted to publicize that this is a fun place to go on Shabbos. You could be Michal Shabbos and you're going to a fun Kiddush or something like that. So they wouldn't give it a derogatory name. So the Gemara says, so in the Mishnah, it seems that you don't give it a derogatory name. No, the Gemara says, it had both qualities. Yes, you could have a nice Kiddush there and good parties over there, but could be, it was still a confined place and they called it a derogatory name. So the Gemara just wants, for semantics, how do you read the Mishnah? The Mishnah says that it was called Beis Yazek. Was it you call it Yazek with an ayin as a uplifting name, or Yazek without an ayin and it has a derogatory meaning, confinement? Next Mishnah, and then we'll stop. Kate said, how would they check the Eidim? Okay, now Bezdin is now investigating who were the good pair of Eidim. Zug, the first pair that arrived at this Beis Yazek or any time, Shabar Rishon, that came first, they came first, and they were Eidim number one, and they were checked. And they bring the older one, from the pair, they take the more respected one, and they bring him in alone to meet the court. And they asked him a question. Emar, how did you see the Levana? Did you see it in front of the sun or after the sun? I'm going to show you the picture, makes it simple. And the Gemara is going to ask this question, but let's leave it at that. Here is the sun. The sun is going down. And right over here, you see, let me just draw it over here. I don't know if you can see it over here, but here is the sun. It's going down over here. And lifnei hachama would be, it's on the right side of the sun going down. Did you see the new moon this way? Or la'achar hachama means the sun is on this side and you see the new moon this way. Now, basically, the question is, did you see the moon? Here's the direction, to the north, or did you see the moon to the south? You see the Doron, right? If the sun is over here, did you see it to the south of the moon? So now the Mishnah seems to have a redundancy. Lifnei hachama la'achar hachama. Did you see the moon to the north of the sun, or l'droima to the south of the sun? So the first question the Gemara is going to ask, it seems to be the redundant question. So the Gemara is going to deal with that and how to explain the Mishnah. Kama haya gavoya, how high in the sky was it? Let's take a look. I don't know how they did this, but they would have to, you estimate how high in the sky it was. Was it low in the horizon, a little higher? And then they would ask you, where was the points pointing to? This way, away, or on an angle? What direction was the points pointing up? That's the next questions. How high in the sky was the moon? What direction was it pointing? How wide was the moon? If they said that the moon appeared before the sun, it meant nothing, because that's an impossibility. Because in Israel, in that part of the world, the moon has to appear more on the south. And basically, if it appeared very north, then it doesn't make sense. That can never happen. And then afterwards, they brought in the second guy, and they checked him. Does his words line up with what the first guy said? Because you're a pair of Eidim, you have to match. If we found that both of their words match up, Eidus and Kiyamas, we keep their Eidus. And that they become the Eidus that we establish, that Kiddush HaChodesh. Now, what do you do with all the other people that came? Ushar Kol Azugas, all the other people that came, they asked them like a roundabout questions here, there, not really questions that we need them. Not that we need them, because we have already ate them. We don't need these people. They shouldn't leave frustrated that they came for nothing. So we make them feel important by asking them questions back and forth. So that they should be accustomed to come. So that's why we ask them questions. But really, we establish our Eidim by the first people that matched up according to our calculations. They answered the questions correctly based on our calculations, how the moon should look, and their testimony. So that takes care of the daf. Okay.
Shkar, thank
Okay,
you.
Baruch Tia, everybody.
Very nice Gemara.
Yes, it is.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay, I get the knock, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Good enough.